Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Large Blast podcast, the Warhammer 40,000 podcast, where we like our Mechanicus like we like our heroin, black and full of chaos. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined as always by Matt.
Nanu.
And Welshie.
Greasing up my mecha dendrites.
And we're going to talk today about some Dark Mechanicus goings on. But before we get into that, we're going to do the normal boring thing that most podcasts do, where we ramble shit at the top of the show in a section we call Hobbies Goings On. So, Welshie, what hobbies goings on have you been going on?
I am still ploughing through a 10-man RBT squad because they come with a million weapons. And I'm trying to do a decent job on the old edge highlighting, like multiple layers of edge highlighting for the first time in ages.
These are the Judge Dredd boys, aren't they?
Yeah.
That you've got. Yeah, they're looking really cool. I saw some of your pictures, your progress shots of them.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, I'm really happy with the color scheme for sure. But I say, I don't always, if I'm painting like armies, bother with edge highlight and everything. Contrast these days kind of does it, but these guys, I just fucking love the models, so I'm taking a lot longer than I normally do on.
They are really nice looking models. I've got to say, if you're out there and you've bought an Arbitrese box set and you're not using the Judge Dredd color scheme, then there is something wrong with you. They're just asking, they're shouting out for that, aren't they? They just look so good on them.
Yeah, it's really deciding which one to go for as well. Like, do you go for the film, the kind of dark film one, but I've gone full on 2000 AD, bright green boots, bright gold belt buckles and shoulder pads, and then the red trim on the helmet really kicks it off. I'm going to try and do some kind of ard coat varnish on the visors as well to get that like reflective visor look too. So I'm happy with them so far, but it's a bit of a slog.
Matt, what have you been up to? Anything good?
I'm about to finish another batch of sisters. Delivered another box of sprues to the local Games Workshop, and the manager said it had been really successful. This is the recycling scheme. And I don't know whether we mentioned it before, but I asked him what they were going to use them for, because my understanding of the plastics is that you couldn't make more models with them, which is why they'd never done something like this before, a recycling scheme. He said they are using the material to build children's playgrounds. He didn't elaborate, but maybe like the matting that you get in children's playgrounds or something.
Yeah, say it's probably like these sharp ass, spiky, rugged children's playgrounds, just like loads of sprues like rammed together.
But I thought that was quite a good use for the material, so that's cool.
Look, I'm glad people are using it. I've been stacking up, waiting to get a big box here before I go.
Yeah. It's so much better than lobbing it in the bin.
No. What if they're just using it to make that sprue goo stuff that everyone was obsessed with? They're just recasting models with sprue goo.
That's why they've taken loads of stuff off the Forge World web store, because resin's gone out the window. Oh, yeah. So they're replacing
Can't recycle it. We had a full on Warhammer day.
Oh geez, I forgot that was since the last
weekend, just whenever it was. Superfan Jeff came down. Will, our Blood Bowl player, popped in to play. We had a game of Blood Bowl. Me and Welshie got in we got a quick 2,000 point game in before everyone arrived.
It was great as well. Just really seeing out ninth. I was using the Necron army that has been my ninth main army and is going back in the cabinet because I'm so bored of playing it. But it was great to see essentially the first codex of Necrons versus Matt's almost the most recent Astra Militarum codex, and it was a really close, really fun game that was actually still relatively easy to play with the armies we'd picked.
I hope that 10th edition lives up to what they're saying, because at the moment I do really think that 9th edition's pretty balanced. We had Jeff bring his giant Asteris tank, Forge World model tank, which was insane. Yeah. Tried to blow it up with all my Lehman Russes, but all my Lehman Russes got blown up.
What about you, Stoney?
Well, I've just been doing some ZBrush stuff, working on some servitors, all very boring. But like you did, you mentioned earlier that I've been lamenting on is that all the Forge World demons, like you say, they've gone into sold out and like it's
we
kind
can
of
chat about that now actually, because I haven't put that in the news section. I forgot, but it's some real big hitters there.
It's a real end of an era, that, isn't it? Yeah. Like I was like, oh man, that's like it's still like the only model I really kind of covet in 40k is that like big great unclean one, you know. So it's just kind of like,
has that gone?
It's gone.
The Keeper of Secrets as well, mate. That is one of my favourite models with the boots.
I mean, that's it. I'm not that fussed about the Bloodthirster and the Teach guy, to be honest with you. The
wings on
Change.
that Siege guy look terrible, but
yeah. So, but the Keeper of Secrets and the Great Unclean one, are fucking classics. It's like now all we've got is the GW dudes. It's like they've taken the Mona Lisa down and replaced it with one they've done on MS Paint. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like what happened to my beautiful Great Unclean one.
It's terrible.
Like I haven't really been following it that much, though I've seen people moaning about it inevitably about Forge World going down. But remember, Stoney, I don't know, 6 months ago, you said on the podcast, like, oh, I've heard a rumor that they're going to get rid of Forge World.
Well, that is one of the things that I was kind of wondering as well, because as soon as I saw that the demons were down, I was like, that's it, Forge World is over. No one, what's this? This is bullshit. I checked out their new model releases. I was like, okay, actually, fair enough. Their new model releases are shit hot. They're really cool. But it is odd. It's like, well, what is the future for Forge World? You know, it's still, I still think that's a question that needs to be asked. But
but I think it's going to be the small games, isn't it? Because they're making so much more Blood Bowl, Necromunda.
I mean, is it going to just end up? Is it going to, especially as GW does more 30k stuff, is it going to just end up getting kind of swallowed up by GW? And is it like, I think so.
I don't think there will be in 5 years' time any resin, Horus Heresy, or 40k.
No, and honestly, that's kind of a good thing. I'm glad there's no resin, but I want them to keep the designs. I like the miniatures.
I don't know. I can see it kind of staying. Maybe it's just changing. They're just changing the business model, but they're, all those Titans, they shift a lot of units of those Titans.
I'm probably excluding that. I mean things that the average Joe is going to be putting on the tabletop.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Titans aside, because even their sort of standard troops are more expensive than GW's ones.
How much is that pack of 5 Krieg horsemen?
Oh yeah, 90 quid or something. 100 quid.
But there's more than just the fact that some really sexy models are going. Particularly sad for me is that 2 of the big Forge World models that are going, the Malanthrope and the Dimachairon, are staples in my army, and they haven't been replaced with 40k kits. And I'm not sure they're going to get rules. 2 of my favourite models, I granted never bought the Forge World ones. I've kit bashed both of them out of plastic, but I'm worried I'm not going to have rules to play competitively with them anymore. And they're 2 of my favourite models. So it's not just the cool artistic side that's gone. Some people have actually lost playable rules potentially. And anyone that's actually bought one of those massive Necron pylons won't be able to use it either. But I've never met anyone with one of those.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard 6s are now 4s?
It's the news.
Gene Stealer Limo's back.
News. All right, so we're back. We're hitting up the top rules of 10th edition again. So we've got another 6 from Welshie. He's going to drop some new rules on us. We're going to find out what we think. Let's go.
Okay, so at number 6 is Rad Bombardment. Matt, I know you're trying your best to avoid everything 10th edition until it all gets released, but I'm going to spoil a bit of it now because this is your main army, the AdMech. Rad Bombardment, start of battle round 1. Each enemy unit in your opponent's deployment zone must decide whether it will take cover or stand firm. If a unit stands firm, roll a d6, and on a 3+, it suffers d3 mortal wounds. And then there's nuclear fallout after you've bombarded your enemy's deployment zone. At the start of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, roll a d6 for each enemy within your opponent's deployment zone. On a 3+, it suffers a mortal wound. I think that is super thematic. You're like raising the ground from which they're starting and making them come forward towards you. Does that excite you?
Yeah. It's so I just as you said, I just so uninterested in reading any of this stuff because it's kind of
well, don't worry because you've got another 5 to come.
You need to see it in context. I think that's quite cool, but it's just a orbital bombardment, which has been in lots of other codexes. I guess it's the same sort of thing.
It is quite cool though, and what's quite good is to stand up for the rule here, Matt. You've been day drinking, you've got low energy. We understand, all right, but they've been this orbital bombardment. It's thematic. It's got the fallout, and like you say, it makes you move, so it changes the game a bit. It sounds like a fun rule to me. I'm with it.
Well, it was only number 6 on today's top 6 rules.
Oh, they're only going to get better?
Absolutely.
Whoa.
Okay, so next up is the Hearthkin Warriors. And what was really exciting about the Hearthkin Warriors datasheet for me, which is a Votan kind of standard troops unit, is that it's so fucking complicated. It absolutely obliterates any chance of me wanting to buy Votan as an army, which is great because I didn't really want to anyway. That's why I like this rule.
Well, we didn't like you anyway, Voltan, so suck on that, I guess, your rules.
Exactly. Next up, World Eaters, another really cool, fluffy, army-wide rule. This is at the start of every battle round. The World Eaters player rolls 8 dice, very thematic, numbers 8. And depending on which combination of doubles they get, depends how much power their troops get. It could be anything. If they get double freeze, they get sustained hits, which is like exploding 6s. They could get, if they get triples, they get total carnage. Destroyed models can fight after a unit has finished making its attacks. Just really fun and thematic. Super swingy, probably completely unbalanced.
Yeah,
but fun.
is that like when do you roll that then? Like, do you do that at the beginning of the game? Is it for a turn or something?
This is essentially at the start of every battle round or at turn, yeah, essentially.
Okay. Because one of the things, like, this is a really stupid thing for someone that's played Chaos to say, but I always really hate things like the Warp Storm table and like the stuff that you just like roll and you're like, oh man, that completely changes what I would have done if I'd like, got this before or whatever. So I don't know. I'm impartial to that.
Next rule that I liked was Plague Burst Mortar. So I have never seen as salty a response from any rules preview ever than the current Death Guard Facebook groups. If you want to see some real men getting angry at plastic toys, jump on the Death Guard Facebook groups because they've been moaning all over the place.
I don't know about that.
If you reckon you've seen some worse.
Yeah, I've seen worse. I'll tell you about that in a minute.
These guys have just been moaning throughout. They basically lost their 5-up feel no pain across the board. And instead of like thinking about how all of the other rules might recombine in different ways and how the fact everything's kind of gone up in toughness and lots of their rules could be played to reduce people's ability to hold objectives, they've just lost their shit.
Look, guys, I know it's easy to mock, right? But as a Chaos player, when I see those Nurgle guys lose their 5-up invulnerable save, I don't know. I just feel like a part of me has died. I'm no longer disgustingly resilient.
Yeah.
That is, in fact, that's the phrase that everyone's saying. We're not even disgustingly resilient anymore. It's like you're a pip tougher than everything else. Your Terminators have got their invulnerable saves. Anyway, whatever.
It's time for the fan base to man up and become disgustingly resilient. So we lost disgusting resilience, but we can be disgustingly resilient ourselves.
For sure. And one thing that they weren't very resilient about is that the Plague Burst Mortar has had its kind of whole reason for being changed. It used to be one of the best guns that I've thought for a long time in the game at just wiping out pretty much anything. And it's now been kind of re-specialized to a more hits, less damage, an actual mortar than what it was before. So they didn't like that either, but I do because I hate playing against them. Next up, I've gone and done it, boys. I've read a Tau article. And I've picked a Tau.
For your Tau army? Is it for your Tau army?
I don't have a Tau army. I think you'll find their orcs dressed as Tau and therefore an orc army. Market Lights has changed. And I think it's better.
I heard about this.
It's cooler.
Yeah.
It's less gimmicky than it kind of was before, where you're firing little kind of lights from various things across the board. Essentially, and I won't read the whole rule because it's massive, but your units are kind of working in pairs. So you have a guiding unit and a spotter unit and a guided unit. So one unit will make an attack against something at its normal ballistic skill, and that unit is then paired with another unit that can make its attacks at an improved ballistic skill, essentially. And I think it's fun. I think it's better than just random drones flying around firing the odd marker light, and then you've got to count up how many marker lights on stuff. Just something gets a better ballistic skill if something else has shot the enemy. Seems cool to me.
Is that not how it used to work in 7th?
I think 7th was similar to that, but I remember people like kind of counting up how many marker lights the unit had, and then they had to decide how to spend those marker lights and what they were doing. And this just seems much more streamlined.
All right, well, that's good.
And if that wasn't good enough, they've also previewed one of the biggest guns in the game, the Storm Surge, which is their big mech that's got a flat 12 damage gun on it, which people started moaning about. But again, we haven't seen all the other big guns. I think one of the new Knights has got a massive gun. But yeah, that potentially hitting on 3s, possibly 2s with marker lights could be pretty nasty. Okay, so then my top rules. Matt, get your duster out, because it's time to bring an old army back to the tabletop. It's the Grey Knights, and they've got some decent rules in 10th edition. Standard squad's got a 2-up save. Really cool on the purgation squads. That's going to be excellent. Their army-wide rule is teleport assault. So every turn, if you're playing a 2,000 point game, you can teleport 3 units around the board. They are going to be wild and fun.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'm excited for them, the best Space Marines to get.
Power armor have got a 2-up save.
Artificer armor, I think, is what they're calling
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Better power armor.
Yeah.
So yeah, potentially if you're a Grey Knight player, you haven't had much love for 9th edition. Hopefully those cheer you up a bit. And I'd like to see more of them on the table because they're just a cool army.
I see some new Grey Knight models, that would be, they must look pretty fucking tiny now compared to these Primaris guys.
Especially considering like all of the actual standard firstborn models people were using seem to be being replaced. Maybe they've got that 2-up save because they're harder to hit because they're really small.
Just really small.
And they're probably made of metal if you're fielding an entire Grey Knights army.
Everyone is like, is that a child on the battlefield? I can't shoot at him.
So there we are. There's my top 6 for this week. I'm sure there'll be more next week. It's too much to take it all in, but there's a flavour of what's going on.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Hi gang, do you love surfing the web?
Yeah!
Of course you do! But be warned, unscrupulous internet providers are selling your information, stealing your unfinished novel ideas, and laughing at your nudes.
Oh no, not my nudes!
That's why today's episode is sponsored by Gord VPN, the only VPN powered by the unholy powers of chaos. Let's say you want to rewatch The American Office, but your local Netflix doesn't have it.
No!
Simply change your location to the Eye of Terror, where you'll see such heinous things it'll make you stab out your own eyeballs with your fingers. And then you'll no longer even give a shit if Pam and Jim ever get together.
Brilliant!
But wait, there's more. VPN stands for Virtual Private Neural Destruction, and acts as a kind of spiritual lobotomy, helping you to lose all sense of individuality. Then you won't even care if some kid from halfway around the world steals your credit card information to buy Roblox coins. So thanks GordVPN for sponsoring this episode of the show. GordVPN, lose your soul, but never be hacked again. Oh no, my fire alarm's going off too much. Take the battery out. It's the Dark Mechanicus episode of the Large Blast podcast. So, Welshie, what are we talking about? What are we doing? We're going to start from the beginning. We're going to start from 30k Dark Mechanicus, the normal Mechanicus. We're kicking around on Mars. Let's get into some 30k lore then. So, as far as I can tell, the Mechanicus, they're hanging out there like they're the Martians. Emperor comes, he defeats the Void Dragon, pretends to be the Omnissiah.
Yeah, basically, that's kind of his first appearance. He comes in and goes, what would be really good if we had an alliance between the technology and priests of Mars and Terra, and causes this alliance with the Mechanicum, called the Cult Mechanicus on Mars. And a lot of them saw him as a machine god, which they refer to as the Omnissiah, a kind of kindred spirit who values their technology and did what the Emperor does. He kind of comes down all shiny and oiled up and says, worship me, I'm really good, look how strong I am, and we'll protect you, and it totally won't be one-sided, and you'll kind of get everything you need, and we'll be equal partners in this.
I mean, he kind of duped him a little bit though, right? Didn't he? Because he's not really the Omnissiah in a way. I mean, I guess there's an argument to say that he is, because the Void Dragon, he kills the Void Dragon, right? Which is like a Catan,
or imprisons it.
Catan.
Yeah,
but that was,
and then whether it's completely gone is not necessarily known.
And somehow imprisoning it on Mars makes the Martian people more intelligent or something like that, which is the Omnissiah spirit. So he kind of, in a way, does the thing that makes the Omnissiah happen, but him saying that he's the Omnissiah is a bit of a stretch.
I don't think he
doesn't say that, but it is interesting to know. They see him as that, but it is interesting to know. I always think how at this point in time, how against any other humans believing him to be a god he is, but when it suits him to let these guys believe it. Oh, it's actually quite useful if they worship me.
Yeah,
they're more likely to follow me.
Well, in a way, it's a bit like the start of the problem again, if we're getting into the Dark Mechanicum stuff, because some of them are like, because even though he's like kind of does that whole kind of like, oh, well, you know, I'm not really a god, but, you know, whatever, if you worship me. There are some of them that are just like, no, he's definitely not a god. And they're
exactly.
kind of,
The machine god isn't the Omnissiah. They're two separate things. The Omnissiah is the manifestation of the machine god in real space. So he's like
so it seems the physical embodiment, right?
Yeah.
He's not.
So I guess they
he's
see
like
the emperor.
Jesus, basically.
Yeah, they see the emperor as like machine Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he lets it go. He's like, okay.
Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Because this is going to work out really well for me. But there is obviously, as you said there, Stoney, like dissension, and there's lots. There's initially quite a small sect, but it does start to, you know, people are whispering, actually, maybe this Jesus fellow isn't all he's cracked up to be. And over time, that dissent grows and leads to rebellion, which we'll come on to in a bit. But one of the kind of first people to be part of that sect is Kelbor Hal. So a young Kelbor Hal gets drawn in to this kind of sect, and all the while is working his way up the ranks. He oversees the biggest forge city on Mars, which is called Olympus Mons. So he builds the biggest forge city. He's super great. Everyone loves him. And he falls into the treachery more and more kind of in the background as he's rising up the ranks. So you have this guy who already is looking negatively on the Emperor, looking like he's going to become the guy in charge. As always happens with the Emperor, what he was promising doesn't necessarily turn out to be the case, and things that kind of heighten this anti-Emperor sect is people seeing them. It's not a two-way street. The Emperor seems to be drawing more from Mars than he's putting in. No one's seen the Emperor for ages. He's off fighting his war, his crusade for humanity across the stars, and essentially using Mechanicum resources in order to do that. And I think that kind of fosters that anti-Emperor sect to the point where it kind of starts to bubble over, and you start getting competition and rivalry between the different forges on Mars. You know, it's becoming clear now, it's not just a kind of people whispering it in the dark or at the pub. It's become a kind of, it's clear that certain forges have an allegiance towards the Emperor, and certain forges don't really have an allegiance towards the Emperor, and are looking for someone else to fill that hole and back them.
Because I think that really at the end of the day, all the Mechanicum really care about is making machines and like machines and stuff, isn't it? Because I mean, does the Emperor not kind of sort of win over the Mechanicum in the first place by kind of offering them STCs? Is that?
Well, he does kind of mention it, but not really. The person who does come in and offer is your boy Horus.
Yeah.
So he sends Regulus, which is an ambassador, to Kelbor Hal, and essentially promises to lift all of the Emperor's restrictions. There will be no more forbidden technologies, because I guess that's the thing. The Emperor says, you know, you can't look into some of this stuff because the Emperor knows about the problems with AI. See a couple of episodes ago. You won't have to listen to that stuff anymore. You can kind of do what you want. I've got a load of STCs up my sleeve. And also, I'm going to unlock the vaults of Moravec, which I'm sure Matt will tell us a bit more about in a bit. But this is a secret underground vault of tech that the Martian priesthood hasn't been allowed to access. So this is a pretty damn good offer for people that are looking for a patron.
I think there's something you just said a minute ago, Stoney, but it's quite important when we're kind of going into this early history that we have to consider and remember that the Cult Mechanicus and Mars itself is basically a separate empire to Earth. It's completely separate entity. So them kind of giving themselves over to being under sway of Earth is actually like a very, very big deal for them to suggest that the Emperor is actually in charge of them and that they are subservient to Earth is massive, because they are the second human world. They are their own completely separate civilization to Earth.
In that sense, it's really different to what's happening in the Great Crusade, right? Because every other planet that they come to on the Great Crusade, reaches compliance, either by being destroyed or forced or enslaved or utterly overwhelmed by a better Imperial force. But I think at this stage, to take on Mars like that, to subjugate Mars completely wouldn't have been possible, or may have been, but would have been too costly.
But I mean, that's it. It's kind of horses for courses, isn't it? The Emperor knows when he goes down to rescue Angron, he's going to have to kick shit out of some people. But he knows that when he goes to the Mechanicus world, he's going to have to, be a bit more diplomatic, do a bit of give and take, isn't it? So
but I think he gives more than any other planet is given.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, he gets a lot as well. To be fair,
I always wondered, like, what would have happened if like the Tau were really close and around at this time. Like the Tau technology was an option. Could they have been part of the Empire?
Yeah.
So anyway, so now you've got this underground movement that's not so underground, who's been offered everything essentially by probably obviously being promised more than they'll actually ever get from Horus. But the schism of Mars, they call the next bit that happens, and that's when the vaults of Moravec are opened. And part of the problem with opening those vaults is that some of the scrap code that's in there gets out, and the scrap code is essentially a computer virus that causes massive disruption on Mars. And then Cowboy Hal and the Dark Mech use this time and turmoil to kind of rise up properly.
Well, the scrap code's kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, as far as I could tell from me when I was looking into this, the scrap code had already turned to chaos. Like it was its own thing, and it was kind of like a chaotic, like it's not like a machine that's like infected by chaos. The code was already like a chaotic thing, so which is kind of crazy, and it got out. Everyone had to like unplug their computer basically, because it was like literally either that or it just explodes and fucking everyone's Xbox red ringed at the same time, all that kind of shit. It was just
that's an interesting idea actually, because the cult mech, because it is a separate empire to Earth, it's existed basically since man first goes to Mars, because the Void Dragon is there and it kind of affects the people there, and it's a planet has been terraformed and all of Earth's industry moves to Mars. It has 30,000 years to build, 28,000 years to build all this technology and develop its own kind of society. But and the cult mech is kind of exists for most of that time. So if the stuff that's hidden in the vault is old technology and it's chaos infused, then perhaps the Dark Mechanicum existed prior to the Horus heresy. Like in 20k, maybe there was one Forge World on Mars that kind of just went heretek and started doing all this chaos stuff, and then someone was like, "Oh shit, we got to put it in the box."
Yeah, exactly. It's last ditch effort, and then everyone's just got sticks and stuff left again to rebuild the next empire.
Yeah,
that's probably what we've got. Like your Tycho RC, that bit where it just about runs out of a battery on your remote control and it just zooms into the road and gets destroyed. That's probably the start of this, I reckon.
Oh man, that's a brand name I haven't heard for a long time. Tycho RC. I remember I had the Hurricane. It had 6 wheels.
I had that one that was kind of like triangular, so that it was always
could always flip over.
Yeah,
classic. Well, anyway, turns out they were possessed by the Dark Mechanicus this whole time.
I turned the telly on the other day, and there was like American rip-off of Robot Wars.
Yeah, BattleBots.
Yeah.
What
the fuck?
It's like it's still going on. I went round.
Crazy.
I was staying around Clem's house the other day, and me and him watched like 3 seasons of it. It was fucking amazing.
Are we saying that Craig Charles might be one of the first Dark Mech? Is that what we?
Yeah.
I'm saying he at least knows of the dark technologies.
So back to the dark technologies. Kelbor Howe then goes kind of all in on the treachery at this point and signs up to Horus to say, we're going to make you the Furious Abyss, which is his big battleship, which was intended to destroy the Ultramarines Legion. That was the purpose of it. And it was kept secret in the Jovian shipyards. So once complete, the shipyards get destroyed. So they blow up the Jovian shipyards, to keep this whole thing secret. And this basically is the kind of them signing on the dotted line going, the treachery is now in full swing. And Mars falls into massive civil war. And I think we talked about, I can't remember what episode we talked about, but there are a few standout characters that try and
we
stop
did
against that, where they talk about the
Admech.
new sphere, which is the like Wi-Fi in the Admech episode, where the scrap code doesn't get into the Wi-Fi, so that allows there to be more of an uprising in favor of the Emperor or the Omnissiah. And yeah, that's what happens. That's the fall. The Emperor promises stuff and doesn't really follow through. That causes subterfuge because people don't think he is a god. And that leaves an opening for someone with a better offer. It's a classic story of small fish picking the bigger pond master. That's probably a phrase.
Is that's the weirdest saying I've heard.
Classic,
oh yeah,
classic story.
Oh, see the fish are turning on the pond master. That old expression, yeah. Like a frog in a top hat just getting beaten up by a bunch of fish. Well, I mean, we've mentioned them several times. STCs, right? Standard template constructs. They're the most kind of valued thing in the universe, really, at least for like mankind and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you picture an STC looking like? Is there a description of any?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like that's the thing is like because they always like I've heard them referred to the shards of STDs, which makes them sound like they're on like just a bit of a floppy disk somewhere or something. But
that's a sentence, isn't it? You don't want your floppy disk getting shards of STDs.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Yeah, we spoke about this in the AI episode. I think the standard template construct tour is like a giant 3D printer machine that you can put these data wafers in and it will make stuff.
But what do you think so it's just a floppy disk like if you pictured it in your head?
No, there are like massive machines that make stuff, but there's also the floppy disk thing that is also called an STC.
Yeah, sure.
So they're kind of two separate things.
Okay, well, that's sort of what I mean. It's like something that you could carry in your if you could carry in your pocket or whatever if you went and found one of these. Not the massive printer, but the thing that goes in it. Like, how do you picture that in your mind? Is it sort of super futuristic, or is it like written on parchment, like with hieroglyphics?
For me, it's like a floppy disk, but with a quartz crystal in the middle.
All right, cool.
That's how I think of it.
Snazzy.
Instead of that little magnet thing.
I like the idea of it being like almost like a Rosetta Stone, like a big slate of metal, and it's like engraved with loads of stuff, and like the metal won't rust or anything, and then you put it in the computer and it like reads.
It's kind of like one of those. It's like futuristic, but not quite futuristic. So like 1950s futuristic, where you've got to like push in a card and pull it out, and the machine goes beep and then starts like whirring and going and shit. I imagine like it's kind of it's like on a piece of metal, so it lasts forever and it can't deteriorate, and you don't need a lot of technology to be able to understand it somehow, but actually the technology behind it is very clever because it's from the Dark Age technology. Like, I don't think it's like basic in any way, but you don't need a lot of technology to understand.
And there's definitely bits in the lore, like you were saying, Matt. There's times in the books I can think of where they find the 3D printer, but they don't have the software. And then instances where they find the software and they have to like reverse engineer. That's what all of Ark and Land stuff is. In one of them, like half the things he's found the plans, but he doesn't have the machines to make it, so he makes the machines. Like he doesn't conceptualize anything.
Like the STC for the Terminator armor is actually for working for like mining and stuff in very harsh environments, like inside volcanoes and stuff, and inside meteors and comets. And it wasn't actually built for armor for fighting in, but because it's so rugged. Whoever read it was like, it's great, a suit of armor, let's do it. And I swear some other thing is rumored as like a rhino or something is meant to have been like an agricultural vehicle.
That's right. Something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Oh well, there you go. Well, anyway, I just thought it was interesting to talk about STCs. We never really like think about what they're actually like. I don't know if they've ever been described in any literature or anything. If anybody knows, leave a comment.
Like Welsh, or something.
I think the other thing is that will impact / retcon / change this lore is all of the Votan stuff as and when that gets developed, because they basically said that the Votan head things that they've got are kind of like STC AI cross things, and as that becomes clearer, maybe it'll come out in the wash. Some of
Maybe
this
we'll
stuff.
see one.
Yeah, oh, that'd be cool. A model or it's a scenery piece.
It's just a Digimon. Remember them? It's a Tamagotchi.
Oh,
It's
man, I love the Digimon.
Yeah.
After they all fell in the Civil War and everything, and after there's a bust up with them, they got a lot of them went to the Eye of Terror, didn't they? That was
The renegades fled the Imperium into the far corners of the galaxy and mostly took refuge in the Eye of Terror. Although they are in another section of space, the Halo stars. There are some that fled over there.
They're all fucked up anyway, aren't they? The Halo stars.
Yeah. But the Eye of Terror is where all of the traitor forces go, so they follow everyone else basically, including the traitor legions, the traitor Titan legions, and other chaos forces.
I got some cool facts about when these guys that moved to the Eye of Terror, because they all start going a bit crazy and we've kind of talked about this before, and I think particularly with the Cult Mechanicus is they are kind of true Chaos Undivided in a way.
Yeah,
they're not really like aligned to any one thing, and a lot of the guys, because they're so obsessed with the technology and stuff, they're very kind of unaware that they're kind of falling to chaos in some ways. And I read this really cool thing about this one dark cult of Mechanicus guys that ended up in the Eye of Terror without really even realizing it. They're just like, oh, it's all a bit like green and twisty around here, isn't it? I'm so glad that we've moved out here to carry on our works or whatever. And they slowly start kind of falling more and more to chaos. And they're called the Cult of Lubrici. And they're basically a cult that worship lubricant, and I think they love kind of like oils and like lubricants, and they're basically in charge of making all the lubes for the various different machines in the Eye of Terror. And they've got to the point now where they basically believe that virgin blood, is the best lubricant for their kind of demon engines and stuff. So
is their biggest customer the Emperor's Children?
I'm sure it is. Apparently, what's quite funny is it kind of says in the lore as well that their lube is actually really bad because it's just blood, so they just have to like use loads and loads of it. They've got these kind of stadium-sized blenders where they just chuck in virgins basically and get all their blood out and use it for their machines. But I thought that was kind of cool, but because they have no idea that they've fallen to chaos. They just think that they've discovered that blood is like the best lubricant, even though it's whack. And
I hope you're listening, Henry Cavill, because if the first Amazon Prime series episode doesn't involve hurling hundreds of virgins into giant blenders to make Emperor's Children leave, you haven't got 40k.
I mean that's grimdark, isn't it? I always have found that. I mean, we bang on about it in our chaos episodes. Just I love the idea of like of actually chaos. Just you don't wake up one day and just say I follow chaos. You most of the time you don't even know you're a follower of chaos. You just slowly, incrementally lose your mind.
Yeah.
And that's quite cool. And a lot of these Dark Mechanicus do lose their mind. I was just thinking, I don't think I read like at what point they become known as the Dark Mechanicus, but the Dark Mechanicus isn't like it's not like a unified force across the galaxy like the AdMech is. They're more
just culty for sure.
Yeah.
They do split into different cults, and
I don't think they like consider themselves the Dark Mechanicus. I think it's just kind of it's almost like what the AdMech call anyone that's not AdMech.
Well, one of the things that happens when they move into the Eye of Terror is because obviously the laws are kind of different in there. So a lot of the kind of stuff that they're inventing is different from the stuff that the Mechanicum would be inventing. So they kind of see themselves as the warp Mechanicum in a way. They're just kind of like guys that are doing the same job, but like in the warp or whatever. And so it becomes less about like, got to measure where this bolt is going to go to. Like, we must sacrifice 1 million virgins to make the machine work. So.
Yeah.
Where do they get their nuts from?
That'd be the cultus nutticus who are obsessed with making nuts out of brain or something.
But the so they all hide out in the Eye of Terror, and they basically, so there must have been Forge Worlds over in that area of space, and so as they retreat, they inevitably end up in these Forge Worlds, which inevitably end up as kind of chaos infested Forge worlds, and they, for the 10,000 years since they retreated to the Eye of Terror, have been churning out weapons systems, demon engines, and equipment for the Black Crusades, for Abaddon's Black Crusades into the Imperium. So they're like the armory of chaos, but they fight amongst themselves as you'd expect from chaos. But after 10,000 years, some of these Forge worlds, which are called Hell Forges, are pretty interesting. And I've got a few notes on some that caught my fancy.
Regale us.
Don't even know how to pronounce this one. Shmesh.
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 Shmesh. But it's also handily it's known as the Iron Pit, and it's famed for the skills of its tech adepts and the quality of its cogitator systems produced there. But for a long time, it was cut off by warp storms. It must have been like on the edge of the Eye of Terror, because it was a loyalist Forge world, an Admech Forge world, but it was cut off by warp storms, and it was raided by Xenos. And then when the warp storms disappeared, an Admech fleet went there, and it got blown up because they turned to their own crazy ideas. I mean, again, it's like the idea they didn't necessarily fall to chaos, but over the thousands of years they were on their own planet, hidden from the Imperium. They kind of developed their own technological understanding. But now they are twisted tech priests, and those twisted tech priests deal freely with anyone. So any creature, human or Xenos, as long as they meet their price, in slaves. So their finance is slaves. So you bring them loads of slaves, and or give you anything
put a
that they
spoiler
need.
on your spaceship.
Yeah. A spoiler with some tentacles on.
Nice.
But they fight endlessly with other Forge worlds in the Eye of Terror, which all of the Forge worlds seems to do. The Hell Forges, as you'd expect from Chaos. And one of the technology, or one of the pieces of tech that caught my fancy from this Hell Forge is they use nanoscopic robots. So this idea of nanorobots, which is a modern theory of technology where tiny little robots take over or can get in your bloodstream.
King Charles went nuts about that a few years ago. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, do you remember
is
when
he in
released...
the Dark Mechanicus?
Well, yeah, he released not apparently.
Him and Craig Charles.
Secrets.
Yeah. Ah.
It's the Charleses. Don't trust the Charles. Yeah.
But these are like chaos infused, nightmarish versions of the stuff that Prince and now King Charles must have lost his mind about. But they kind of creep around on the battlefield and just take over. Well, they don't take over, they kind of get inside the enemies, and they eat flesh, they eat living thing.
Nice.
They eat organic refuse.
Like locusts, like little metal locusts.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. They consume the dead and the living. So they would go to a battlefield and just consume everything. Hopefully your enemies and not yourself. But who knows with chaos. Yeah.
And
so
the Samek place, I was reading some of my stuff. Some of the main like Hell Forges there are a bit like Necromunda gone to shit, where they have the Furnace Lord. And the Furnace Lord is the guy who's in charge, but there's no political system. It's just whoever fights their way to the top. If someone invents something new, they win and become the Furnace Lord, which seems brilliant.
I guess it is like Necromunda, because they have the Forges are just big cities, like hive cities, essentially.
But with Slave, I imagine there's a lot less freedom. Even Necromunda.
Although I imagine it kind of depends, doesn't it? Like Necromunda, if you're a slave, you have no freedom. But if you're like near the top, if you're a tech priest, Dark Mechanicus tech priest, you kind of have the freedom to do whatever they want. Yeah. You have more freedom than in the
virgin lube.
Yeah. There was another Hellforge called the Iron Gast Foundry. It's a planet-wide industrial hell that would destroy the sanity of most mortals. The Iron Gast Foundry is a chaotic forge sworn to the glory of Khorne, the blood god. Bristling with brazen gun towers, is all but impervious to invasion, apparently, and a conclave of warpsmiths rule over the planet. So they're not fighting amongst themselves. But they produce everything from chain axes to hell brutes, sarcophagi, to vast demon engines such as the Lord of Skulls and the Lord of Battles. I don't even know what the Lord of Battles is. But
so in terms of the production stuff, these hell forges, the Dark Mech are doing the metal work, but they need a warpsmith to come and put a demon in it. Is that right? The Dark Mech aren't really doing the demon bit, are they?
I can talk on this a bit. This is different from we talked a couple of episodes ago about how Chaos Space Marines make demon engines, but they're making their demon engines in real space. The demons in the warp are actually quite keen to get inside these, specifically soul grinders. They're the big ones. They're the ones that they all the demons want to be, and they're made in a place called the Forge of Souls, which is old. I think it's Vashtar's place and all of that. He's a big fan of that or whatever. It's this massive place that exists in kind of like its own limbo realm inside the warp.
Oh, cool.
Let's say the Forge of Souls opens its door at 9. The Forge opens at 9 right in the morning. A bunch of demons are already outside ready to fight each other, and they're all just fucking fighting each other. They've shown up for the day. They're going to have a big ruck. Whoever wins gets put inside a soul grinder, basically. So they can be from any faction of chaos or have any mark of chaos. But as soon as they get... so they do this pact. I forgot what it is technically, but it's basically like anything I shoot, anything I kill with my sword or anything like that, those souls go to the Forge of Souls. And the Forge of Souls only exists because there's kind of like a truce between all of the Chaos gods, because they and there's this pact with all the soul grinders that, let's say you're a Slanesh soul grinder and Slanesh decides he's going to attack the Forge of Souls. Your duty is to the Forge of Souls. It's not to Slanesh. So even more this kind of idea of chaos being undivided, where they kind of like have to leave their mark behind almost to become a soul grinder, which is kind of the most prized thing that they can be.
That's quite interesting.
But presumably they still need the metal work, and the Dark Mech are sending the metal work to the Forge of Souls.
I'm guessing that all of that is made in these hell forges and stuff. You know,
so they must make them.
One guy's making the legs, and some guys make the nanobots, and some guys putting blood on the joints or whatever. It all just works.
Some guys gluing the metal legs back on for the 100th time.
I mean, I guess like on a graph or whatever, at one end of the spectrum, you have the demon engines and this crazy kind of tech that the Dark Mechanicum can do that, well, the AdMech wouldn't even want to do, but they don't have the freedom to do that kind of stuff, and delving into things like AI. But at the other end, as with all of the chaos stuff in Warhammer, you have cults. So the Dark Mechanicus isn't just in the Eye of Terror. Like it is anyone that falls from the creed of the AdMech would call someone Dark Mechanicus. So there are cults on planets, not necessarily just Forge worlds, but they are cults a bit like any other chaos cultists or the Gene Stealer cults in the hidden back alleys of Warhammer's worlds. So I wanted to talk about this idea of the heretek. So the heretek is the term that the AdMech use to people in these cults. So they could be servitors that have kind of been reprogrammed to not follow the creed of the AdMech, or they could be menials serving the Cult Mechanicus who want to have some more technological freedom, do a bit of innovation, or they could even be tech priests themselves, want to do a bit more innovation. And that on its own, without going to chaos, that marks you out as a heretic. And so they're kind of loosely connected to the Dark Mech. They kind of, a lot of them will inevitably kind of fall under the sway of chaos over time. But as soon as you stray from the path of the Adeptus Mechanicus, you are a naughty, naughty boy. And that depends on how many followers you've got, right? Because you could argue, and I think it helps that they didn't have very many followers. I think to be a heretic, you have to stray from the path and be charismatic. Because if you look at someone like Belisarius Cool or Arkan Land, they were both straying from the path. But because they didn't have any friends, no one joined them. They were just useful people that could be used by
others, whereas someone who strays from the path and gets a cult following becomes a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could apply to any kind of chaos cult, couldn't it? Like, if you're just in your bedroom worshipping corn, it's quite different to if you're like holding mass rallies supporting corn. But I like the idea that what they call a heretic, I mean, or a heretek, just like a heretic, the Inquisition.
Shit GW word, isn't it?
I know.
I love it.
But most of these cults kind of fall into being heretics because they want to strive for more innovation. So a lot of these cults are they're started upon the premise that they need to have more innovation. They want to experiment. So I like this idea of them being like crazy scientists, working in laboratories. Tech priests are definitely crazy scientists, but even the lower normal humans who want to innovate, that's the path of damnation.
It's almost like they just need a better outlet. You know how like the school I used to work at, when it had really clever like IT geeks that would try and hack into like the school systems, the IT department would employ them to do other stuff, or like the government trying to find hackers before like ISIS finds hackers. It's a bit like that. Really.
It is like that.
I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing about the Mechanicum in general, is that like they're less kind of affected by morality in a way, you know, like the morality is stuff that just kind of happens to them, like because their only real goal is to make stuff, and then it's just like, well, if we're making stuff for chaos or we're making stuff for mankind, as long as we're kind of progressing technology forward, then we're kind of fulfilling our goal, you know.
Well, I mean, a lot of them from their own personalities tend to be logic based, very little empathy, and then on top of that, a number of them choose to purposefully remove everything other than logic from their thought patterns. So that you're not getting any morality at all if everything is a number.
And talking of like kind of morality and belief, although the Dark Mechanicus isn't like necessarily a thing, say on those Hellforges, those tech priests would believe, so they'd no longer believe that the Omnissiah that we said is the Emperor. They no longer believe that he is the Omnissiah. They believe that the power of chaos undivided, so the chaos gods, is like a representation of the Omnissiah.
I think one of the reasons we've picked this episode to do today is because we know that there's some codexes coming in Thames that we haven't seen before, and Vashdor, when we all saw him, thought would be the poster boy for Dark Mech. They don't seem to have gone too far down that route outside of Vashdor's own personal ambitions, but
I heard someone make a really good point a while ago where they're like, all the Mechanicus stuff is like friendly bugs, like millipedes and things that like eats like, you know, leaf litter or whatever, and then all the Dark Mech stuff is like horrible bugs like scorpions or like, you know, carnivorous bugs. I thought that's quite cool. So I'd love to see more like carnivorous bugs on the battlefield. That sounds great.
But the other thing the range could have some influence by, and the other thing that makes the Dark Mechanicus, as we say, because it's kind of a loose term, it isn't just when tech priests go to chaos. It's also that you can also be a heretic when you start messing around with Xenos stuff. So the Dark Mechanicus couldn't give a shit about using Xenos stuff. I mean, they love to use Xenos. Anything that can innovate and give them the edge, they're going to use, like Necron stuff, Eldar stuff, Tau stuff. They're gonna use it all, and that is another freedom that they have from the AdMech. The AdMech is very restrictive, obviously, because it's Xenos technology.
I definitely would have joined the Dark Mech at that point when the Emperor stood there going, "What?" Like all but saying, "Worship me," but also you can't do any of these things, and also I'm going to take more out of your finances than you want. And then someone comes on and says, "Hey, do what you want." I
feel like it when it gets to the point where you're lubing up your gear with virgin blood, it's just kind of like, whatever. You know, I'm just, you know, whatever. I'm down for whatever we're doing.
Well, I read that the AdMech still have explorator fleets. So the fleets that go out into deep space, uncharted well, not Imperium, uncharted space to find lost Forge worlds, to find STCs. The tech priests and the Magos that run those fleets are they're by their very nature, they're almost like versions of rogue traders. So they have a lot of freedom. And when they go out, a lot of them can end up as heretics because they're inquisitive by nature. They're finding Xenos and Imperium human worlds that have been separated from the rest of the Imperium for thousands of years, maybe have divergent technology. And a lot of them can just, by their inquisitive nature, just end up kind of doing
just
lost.
investigating everything rather than the stuff that the Emperor wants them to.
Yeah. But the one piece of tech that I thought was quite cool that I did find, which is called a mech spider, and it's an object consists of a human head fashioned from brass. Doesn't really make sense, but it's mounted on a small 8-legged chassis, and the head is fashioned to be an exact replica of a human's, except it is missing the eyes, ears, lips, and tongue. And inside the head is a mechanism that operates the legs, eyes, and mouth if there was anything mounted there for it to control. And it's created as a mockery of the tech priest servitor. So they're kind of like the most useless machine that you could build. And I imagine them just kind of running around as like a tech priest's pet. But
why do they put a human face on it? Is it like just like
it's like the thing in Toy Story?
I mean, it's just like
that's another member of the Dark Mech we've uncovered. We've uncovered 3 members of the Dark Mech. So that's some of the tech that I discovered when I was reading through. But I thought I'd better stop before I got too inquisitive, and I wanted to innovate my computer, and then I'd be labeled as a heretic.
Did your clock start running backwards and your computer start flickering, and a weird Japanese lady climbed out of your TV screen and pulled you into a well?
How it's happened to you as well?
Oh no, I've seen the videotape. I've seen it.
I smoke weed, eat pussy every day.
So in this section of the show, I wanted to tell you guys a spooky story about some real cult mechanicus that is in the real day. And I've got a spooky story for you. And to be honest with you, it's got nothing to do with Warhammer, but I just think it's really interesting. So buckle up. Have you guys ever heard of the Golden Eagle, the most haunted car in the world?
No.
You guys never heard of it?
Interesting.
So this is if nothing else, a fucking crazy story. And like with a lot of these kind of folk tales and things like that, there's a lot of bullshit in here. So obviously take this with a pinch of salt.
You're telling me this ghost story isn't real?
Well, because it's not exactly. There's a lot of incidents that can, like, in researching this, I've tried to really pick out the incidents that are actually researchable and approvable, if that makes sense, rather than, because there's a lot of it that isn't provable, and there's some bad faith actors in this story, I would say. But let me get into it, and we can go from there. So, you know that Stephen King book, Kathleen? Have you ever heard of that? It's about a car that comes to life and chases people. That's basically based on this
like Evil Brum.
Basically like Evil Brum, yes. Okay. A well-trodden reference on this podcast. So the Golden Eagle is a limited edition Dodge 303 from 1964, and it's kind of a real collector's item. I don't know anything about these cars, but people that do might tell you it's a really cool car. And this particular Golden Eagle started its life as a cop car and was driven by 3 different officers in Orchard Beach in Maine, which is obviously why Stephen King likes it so much, because all his fucking books are set in goddamn Maine. But anyway, during its time in service, all 3 of these police officers died, but they all died in the same way, which was by committing murder-suicides with their family. After that, the Maine Police Department decided to sell this car, and it ended up in the hands of a woman named Wendy Allen, who is a very interesting character and did not make researching this very easy, I'll tell you that much. But she is a self-proclaimed witch who apparently only buys haunted cars.
Okay.
And it became the Allen family's family car. It was passed from generation to generation and was driven by a number of the family members. They loved it. They wanted to keep it. They were very defiant about the fact that it wasn't haunted and people should kind of leave them alone. But in this time, the car killed 3 more people. 2 children that were hit by other vehicles and ended up being thrown into the path of the Golden Eagle, whose impact delivered the killing blow. And someone who got a pedestrian that got blasted by a door that just shot open on the Golden Eagle due to a completely unexplainable door malfunction. So
what? The door opened so quickly it killed somebody.
The door opened while she was driving along, and it blasted a pedestrian and killed the pedestrian, basically.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Detached from the moving car. It
just opened up. Yeah. No, it opened up and just blasted somebody. Yeah.
Like they were walking on the pavement and then it just opened and smacked them.
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
Like, so, imagine, imagine if a car tried to high five you as you were like running down the side of the street. That's basically what happened.
Like when you've got to dodge a bus wing mirrors when you're walking.
Yeah, exactly.
Road,
There's seen some near misses. I've seen some girls get clobbered with those fuckers. But imagine that on a fucking speeding cool ass Dodge 303. Anyway, and apparently the door thing is like an ongoing problem. But it was
what with that car?
Well,
it's an ongoing problem.
I just want to get the story out before I start getting into too much about it, because there's a lot here, and I'm just trying to put it into like a story that I can tell. Anyway, this local church group started to get really, really uppity about this car. As far as I can tell, this must be like a really religious area of America. And they start preaching about how this is a devil car and it's got spirits in it, and this lady's a witch and all this crazy shit. People from the church start to taking to like vandalizing this car. There's like a number of efforts to vandalize this car and and go after the family and things like this. It sounds really nasty, to be honest with you. Eventually, 3 members of this church group, they end up stealing the car and doing like a chop shop job. They chop it into pieces and they send it around the country. Like they got rid of it. This was in the 90s. Mind you, so that this isn't like where they've got like really good internet or anything, but the Allen family, by putting out ads in newspapers and stuff around the country, managed to get all their pieces of this car back.
No way.
They managed to they make the car back again, and the 3 people that took the car and vandalized it, one of them was decapitated in a freak car accident with like an 18-wheeler, like Omen style, and the other 2 were hit by lightning in completely separate incidents.
Wow.
All 3 of them died. These are like the only cases that like have stuff about them which you can look up and find that I was able to do, because apparently this car is responsible for 14 deaths on record, 32 if you believe the woohoo stuff that goes around it. So yeah, it's the most haunted car in the world. Is it a Dark Mechanicus car? The Golden Eagle? Find out for yourselves.
I think that is. That's very interesting. I think that sounds like a Dark Mechanicus.
I mean, these guys, the Allens, they've been like people think that there's this conspiracy theory going around that they're aliens, all this kind of crazy stuff. It's like
Alan does look a little bit like
layer.
Alien.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Oh.
Confirmed. Aliens confirmed.
Or what if it was the Omnissiah?
Well, it could be. What if all this time, because old Dan Abnett loves to refer to him as being all kinds of historical figures. What if he had a period of time in the 80s to 90s when there wasn't much going on in the world, and he thought, I'll have a crack at being a car for a while.
Well, if he was going to be any car, it'd be the Golden Eagle as well. So it only makes sense.
If only it was a 2-headed eagle.
Maybe this is his first kind of throne thing. He's actually stuck in the engine of a Golden Eagle 303. He's just going around blasting pedestrians with car doors and fucking like killing kids and shit.
Dodging the rent, but the rent never stops.
So a big thanks again to GordVPN for sponsoring this episode of the show. Don't forget to enter code in checkout for a 20% discount and a free pair of infidel lungs, which you can do with as you please. GordVPN, because there's nowhere more private than the internal trappings of your mortal soul. We've heard about some bad boys and some naughty dark priests on this episode, but Welshie's got a list of 5 of the naughtiest and baddest priests. Let's find out and hear a little bit about some of these bad boys, shall we? Welshie, take it away.
That is absolutely correct. And I must say, I've purposely left out Kelp or Hal and picked some more obscure ones. So the first of which we've talked about at length on a previous episode, so we don't need to go too much in, but it's Lucas Crom. And I think he's most important to mention because if I think Dark Mechanicum, I think of the John Blanche, Lucas Crom, horrible priest with the chainsaw. That is him. And he pisses around with the Caban machine and makes the big old AI machine. See 2 episodes ago if you want to learn more. But he's in the mix because he is pretty badass.
So what's his deal? He's the big chainsaw man.
He
makes AI.
Yeah, he makes AI, and that's not allowed.
Yeah.
He's mates with Kelbor Hal, and he makes AI, and they have the big AI night thing going on that we discussed in a couple of episodes ago.
He almost falls from the cult mech before anything, like before anyone. Like he's
he's a nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
He's not really about the politics. He's just about the AI. He's gone down the rabbit hole too early.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
He only listens to whack rejigged music from other
Do you know what I reckon he listens to, which I tried listening to earlier and forgotten that it wasn't very good? Do you remember Executioners, the like Mike Shinoda side project? It's just all scratch music.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He listens to Executioners.
You never listen to Executioners. Check it out. It starts with an X and a hyphen. That's how you know it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. The next priest then that I pulled out was a guy called Magos Vathek. And this fella, he's a wannabe necromancer. He's all about using technology to bring back dead tissue. And he has no friends. He doesn't really have a following. And everyone just kind of thinks it's because he's getting on a bit. He's trying to save himself.
So he's a kind of like a Dr. Frankenstein, but like he had to make a friend. It sounds like he's like trying to like bring people back.
Yeah, he's trying to make friends out of dead people, whilst also probably trying to make himself immortal, and that's kind of his one aim.
But I mean, aren't they kind of like? Isn't fucking old? What's his name?
Cool.
Cool. He's like 1 billion years old or something.
Yeah.
Isn't he?
10,000 at least. Yeah.
He just changes the batteries and he's good for another 10 years, right? I mean, like, can't this guy like? What's
He's obviously just not as clever. He's just not as good. Maybe he likes flesh because you remember some of them like flesh still. Some of them they're not all about replacing every part of them with metal. So maybe he doesn't want to lose his sweet cheeks. Doesn't want to swap his sweet ass.
He's really caked up. He just can't. He just can't let him go. Basically, like a vending machine with a sweet ass on it.
So yeah, he's on the card. So we got Lucas Crom for his AI invention. We got Magos Vathek for being a bit of a loner that's really into bringing back dead people. We've got Magos Paracelsus Fuel. And he's really interesting, I think, because Matt, he comes in with a bit more of what you were saying earlier, how there is a kind of sliding scale of what is considered bad. And he's the leader of a group called Disciples of Fuel, which were a breakaway from the Mechanicum. And these guys put knowledge above everything. Cool. So all they care about is knowledge. They don't even have any engineers other than engineers that work on cogitators for improving their knowledge. And they all walk around with these massive backpacks on their back that power the computers that are like powering their brains. And they don't talk to each other. And they sometimes forget that they're flying to a place because they're so concentrating on the calculation that they're trying to do that they forget what they're doing. And these guys have kind of disappeared for decades into the void because of this. So they go like into the void on the edge of the galaxy. And then like decades later, they'll just appear again and be like, oh, I finally worked out that problem that I was working on. So the standard AdMech just don't like them for that reason.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
They're not even really, I don't know if you can really consider them Dark Mech, but
no, it sounds like they've got their own thing going on, really. They're like following ants around or something. Like,
they're just
they
knowledge
sound quite
above
cool,
everything.
though.
They do sound really cool. They sound like a cool faction to play in either army, but they do have. So this guy Paracelsus Fuel is kind of like he's like the philosopher that has inspired lots of people to follow him over time. Interesting that he's got Fuel as a surname. Nice kind of mystic Nazism references there, but there's a guy called Delcius Abraxas who's kind of taken this Thulian philosophy to the next level. And he comes in on the Xenos point that you were making. And he believes that the only way to gain true knowledge is through the subconscious of Xenos races. And his whole deal is essentially trying to attach the Xenos races that aren't connected to the warp in order to investigate their subconscious knowledge to implant his own knowledge. So these guys rip out like Xenos brains and relics and implant them into themselves in order to access the warp through a Xenos mind.
That's
seems
pretty
like a
bad.
recipe
That's
for
pretty
disaster.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much heresy in that sentence. It's untrue, but at the same time, sounds kind of cool. Just yeah.
So I don't think we'll put Fuel as one of the 5. We'll have Delcius Abraxas, who's kind of followed his teachings to the extreme. So we've got AI Man, we've got a guy that's implanting Xenos brains, and then we've got fella that's trying to bring back the dead. So the next guy is Magos Phaisarius, the Perjurer. This guy is brilliant. So he came up with essentially mind reading machines in order to mine people's memories. So he has fancy ECGs that look at people's memories and try and get information out of them. But this kind of gave him the bug to be able to look into people's memories, which led him to kidnap a space marine and rip out its omophagia, which is the organ that allows them to taste memories when they eat people's brains. And just implanted it in his own spine to see if he could do it too. And it turned out he could, but he could only do it for a while. But he was kind of addicted then to implanting himself with space marine organs. So he's now a tech priest that just is trying to make himself into an Astartes by implanting bits of their organs into his body.
It's kind of like the reverse version of that Operation game. You're just putting things in, just any old shit.
I think he sounds great. You can imagine him as a dark mech warlord with some really cool, like he could have like a Rick and Morty episode where he has that one big arm, like he's just put one Space Marine arm on.
Yeah, he sounds like the lumpiest of all the guys so far.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last fella that I've got on my list is Elusis Grisvaldi. And he's designed this technology called Oblivion Volators. And these are machines that attach to human brain, and they essentially servitorize people. So they go into the brain and lobotomize them from living. So unlike like conditioned and sanctioned servitors, he has these machines that can essentially turn races into slaves. And he doesn't just do it because it's useful. He does it because it knows it terrifies religious people, because he sells it as something that severs them from their soul. And all the religious people think their souls go into the emperor when they die, really don't like the fact that people are being servitorized and having their souls removed. So he's a pretty nasty character.
I guess that makes him very Dark Mechanicus, though, because it's like he's the kind of anti-religious version. So
Yeah. All right, so there's your 5 then. Who do you reckon? Who's the who's the nastiest, but also who's the most frowned upon by, if we were in the AdMech shoes investigating this, who do we think is worse?
I mean, there's worse, and then there's the guy that's obviously fucking dead bodies. Let's just not beat around the bush. This guy's trying to make himself an undead girlfriend, right? He's going to get a Bride of Frankenstein type lady with a big hairdo with a big white streak lightning bolt down the side. That's what he's after. So I feel like he's going to be the most shunned at the AdMech party, at least.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird. But you did say yourself earlier that even the AdMech are kind of devoid of any morality in that sense.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's morality, and then there's just like, do I really want to like shag a corpse? It's different. It's more like it's something to do. It's more with comfort, I guess, or comfort, or like I don't know. Like.
What about you, Matt? Who do you reckon? You are a tech priest yourself.
Yeah.
Even when you're playing Astra Militarum, you've got more tech priests on the board than anyone else.
I mean, it's going to be Crom. I mean, he builds an AI machine, and he builds it even before Mars turns and joins Horus. He builds it in secret. He's delving into I mean, as we discussed in our AI episode a couple of episodes ago, that is it's almost the biggest sin in the Imperium. I mean,
Hold on now. I mean, he's done all this AI stuff, right? But did he ever bang a corpse? That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, even though it's still like an achievement, you know, it's still like, whereas this other guy, it's just like, or you like, this guy's still like, you'd still be like impressed if you're in the Mechanicum. You'd be like, oh, you know, I'm not down with it, but he's like made some cool AI stuff. I like that, whatever. But like, and then this guy, I'm going to his lecture on corpse banging. Well, I don't know.
You said that the AdMech has no morality, but I would say the AdMech
I didn't say they have no morality. I just say that the human morality is less applicable to them.
Yeah, but I would say that their moral compass is do whatever the fuck you want or create AI. And if they would speak to a tech priest that created AI and a tech priest that had fucked a corpse, they'd probably be like, oh, I've done that as well. But the AI guy, no,
well, they've all thought about making the AI. There must come some point where they're like, you know, they're doing a big algorithm or something, and they're like, oh, you know what? If what was that chat GPU? Maybe I could stick it in there. Like, oh wait, no, I can't do that. I'm going to get back to banging this corpse. You think that's fine?
Stoney, you're right though. The chat GPT or whatever it's called is it's more evidence of the Dark Mechanicum already existing. That's going in our pile that we're creating of the stuff that needs to be investigated further.
So you're saying that this Vathek fella, if he was around now, Stoney, he might be the guy that's he's the guy that started deepfakes. Is that?
I think so. If this is like one of those like Apple conferences they used to do where Steve Jobs comes out in like a polo neck and gives a big speech to everybody, but for the Dark Mech, I'm saying that like at least if you're not that interested in, you know, even if you think that this is the old matey boy is a heretic or whatever, you're still going to his lecture. Whereas the stinky man that's like, hey guys, you know, listen, we got to try to like make dead people come back again or whatever, you know, like for absolutely no reason. You know, some of the corpses have like a nice summer dress on and some lipstick or whatever. Then it's like, oh, hang on, you know, no one's going to that guy's lecture. That's what I'm saying.
What about Araxis though? You going to his? Are you going to take the offer to put a bit of tau brain in your skull and see what happens?
Well, I'm saying at least, but that's that. If what they're about is information, then that's interesting information. You know, you'd still be like, oh, maybe I could take something from this for my own studies because I'm working on how to make a caterpillar be the perfect cobbler or whatever the fuck it is you're doing as a Dark Mech guy. You know. Whereas this
caterpillar would be a great cobbler because he'd have to wear loads of shoes.
Exactly. You're already there. You see, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's why they need to be great cobblers. So you know, so I'm glad that you're on board with my research, but and you can see my lecture at free. But these other lectures, you know, we've got these other guys here, and I'm just not sure about this one guy. He's a bit too Frankenstein. It seems a bit too old school. Like, you know, the flesh is weak. It's kind of the opposite of. I know this guy's got a nice ass and he's trying to keep it, and we've all been there. You know, if we all want to keep a bit of ourselves as we age, but it gradually droops and falls off.
Well, talking of drooping and fall off, do you think the Space Marine fella is chopping off Space Marine dicks and implanting them?
I mean
we've never really discussed what's down there.
He's a bit of a lame one as well, to be fair. But I mean, but surely did they not? Was it not the AdMech that like helped make the Space Marines in the first place? Do they not have some of the genes? Okay, so that's all. So where are Space Marines being made? Where's all this
moon?
That's okay. Right.
That sounds ridiculous what you're saying. On the moon.
But who's making that? There's no AdMech involved in that at all. They're all just
the gene witches of Selenar.
I mean, they're probably involved in the Emperor maintaining the vending machine.
I would have thought that they've got to be at least a little bit interested in what's going on there, particularly this one guy, right? If he's all,
but it's flesh. Like unless mean, you have what do they call them? Like biologists, tech priests that are more into like the biology. I mean, compared to tech priests, Space Marines are pretty boring.
Yeah, I mean they are. That's why.
But I you mentioned Steve Jobs, and straight away I had in my head like a tech priest has found an ancient.
He's found the polo neck.
Yeah, found the polo neck. He's found some ancient videos of Steve Jobs, and he's like, man, this is a genius, ancient genius. Yeah, and he wears a polo top.
He's found an ancient iPod, but the only one he found is the one that had all the YouTube 2 songs previously loaded.
Oh, no. Yeah. The
Came
YouTube
preloaded.
album. Yeah. And even he can't delete them either.
Well, I've listened to both of your arguments there, gentlemen, and I can tell you that you're both wrong, because the creepiest tech priest is Arkan Land, because he's clearly fucking that little cyber monkey he made himself, and that's way worse than Corpse Boy. So
all the STCs are basically just sex machines made by Arkan Land. They've just been misconstrued over the years. They're just put together wrong. He's got something really bad at putting like IKEA style instructions in, so all his blowjob machines are made into tanks.
I'm down with digging in the crates and I'm MVP.
So, Lords of Law, you know the score. It's where I do a quiz for Matt and Welshie. And today we're going to do a quiz about the Emperor. We've talked about him quite a lot in this. So let's get some Emperor facts, shall we? See who knows the most about his shining light. So first question. How is the Emperor described by the Ecclesiarch? Is it A, the father, guardian, and god of humanity? Is it B, the holy light and golden shepherd? Or is it C, humanity's golden sword and psychic shield? What's their tagline? Is it,
Oh, that's a good question. What's the first one?
The first one is
first one.
The father, guardian, and god of humanity.
That doesn't seem 40k enough, though. That seems more like.
What's B?
B is the holy light and the golden shepherd, and C, just whilst we're doing them again, is humanity's golden sword and psychic shield.
I'm
inclined to say C. Okay, there we go.
We've got a B and a C.
I'm going to go B. C.
Well, you're both wrong. It was A, the father, guardian, and god of humanity. That is the official line from the Ecclesiarchy on the Emperor. What do the Chaos Gods call the Emperor? And for a bonus point, can you tell me what it means?
False Emperor. Isn't that what they called him? The Chaos Gods. Sorry, not just Chaos.
Chaos Demons and Gods both called him this.
Arcaphane?
Oh, yeah, Matt. I mean, I'm going to give you a point for that because I can't really read the word properly, but it's anathema.
Anathema.
The
anathema. It ends with a M-A. Anathema. Anathema sounds right. But it's basically an anathema is a formal curse delivered by the Pope to excommunicate or denounce someone from the Catholic doctrine.
Excellent.
But also, it must be the same way. Isn't the anathema the blade that knocks Horus into chaos as well?
I'm not sure I'm saying this word right. I'm not sure any of us are saying it right. Right. I'll put it in a chapter speech or whatever.
Anathema.
Okay, so next question. Who came first, the Chaos Gods or the Emperor? And for a bonus point, can you tell me where the Emperor is supposed to have been born?
I think this is a trick question, Stoney.
Oh.
Because Slanesh came after the Emperor.
Yeah, but I think the Chaos Gods. Okay, yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think.
No, you're right. Okay, the old gods then.
I think they existed before the Emperor.
I also think they did.
And he comes from, I think, ancient Egypt.
Well, you want to take a stab at a place?
I will go older and go Mesopotamia.
Okay,
because he definitely was in Babylon.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that you're probably closer then because the Emperor came first, so neither of you got a point for that. But modern Turkey, apparently. So Mesopotamia is probably closer to Turkey, right? So yeah, there we go.
And where did you find that he's older than the Chaos Gods confirmed?
I was just looking at YouTube videos. This is basically just a 50 facts on the YouTube videos. Or
send me this YouTube video.
I mean, it's. I could honestly, I did it from two because I couldn't re-find this first one. So half of these are from one video and half of them are from another.
I thought the old law was that the Emperor was.
Listen, it's Lords of Law. What I say is right. No points for anybody. You're all on 0 points. Back
all
to
of the
0
human
points.
shamans got put together.
0 points for everybody. All right, next question. Continuing on. The Emperor avenged his... Oh, God, this is a bad one to do if we're questioning the validity of my questioning, but the Emperor avenged his own father's death by killing his father's murderer. But who was it? Was it A, his uncle, as in his father's brother, B, the emperor's own brother, C, a massive tiger, or D, an early incantation of Zeech?
It was A, his uncle.
I also think uncle, but
Oh, you're right. You're both right.
Yeah.
You see,
Cool.
that seemed like a really sketchy fact to me. I didn't know the validity of that.
It's
Is that
in a book. Yeah, it's
Well,
in
then,
one of
I
the Black
guess it must
Library
be
book.
something. Okay.
yeah,
First- the
but then
first
that's
murder.
also will now have been retconned, I think, because the time
No,
and place for
no.
what that happened, like history goes back before when that is said to have happened.
Is it? Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'll retract your points then. No points again for anybody. We're back to 0 points to go. Next question. Why do warp creatures fear the Emperor above all others?
Is it because he can remove them from existence rather than just send them back to the warp? Something like that.
What do you think, Matt?
I mean, that is also true. That what she said is true.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of if I can come up with anything, because I don't think the Emperor is the only thing that can do that. Or maybe
Yeah, I
he
think there must
can.
be some Grey Knight stuff or whatever,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
got to
the
be like...
Custodes
But I
sort of
imagine
like
that it's
swords
getting
do
its
that.
power from the Emperor, though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I think that we've all agreed that, yeah, Welsh,
Yeah.
you're right. Because the Emperor is the only one that can cause true death to a warp entity, like wipe them from existence. Next question. When Korax and Dawn were arguing on Terra in the aftermath of the Istvan crisis, why does the Emperor possess Malkador the Sigillite to join in the conversation? Is it A, to provide valuable tactical insight? Is it B, to deliver information on the fallen Primarchs? Is it C, to instigate a strategic counterattack? Or is it D, to give them a bollocking for arguing in the palace?
D.
I hope it's D.
Yeah, it is D.
But I'm pretty sure it's B, because it's where they tells Korax to go and make the Raptors, wherever the G seed is.
Well, I'm afraid, Matt, you're right. It's basically to give
Yeah.
them a bollocking, tell them to get out of the palace whilst they argue. So it's a point apiece. What
Who tells
happened
him that then? Someone tells him that while he's there.
I don't know. This again. Don't question the Lords of Law. What happened to the residents of Nostramo when the Emperor arrived?
They got killed in a revolt. No, hang on, that's the wrong planet.
Nostramo. It's the dark one, I
Nostramo's-
believe. It's
no,
the
Nostramo's the Night Lords.
Night Lords. Yeah, it's the
Oh,
Night
right.
Lords one. Yeah.
No, they all went blind.
Oh, Matt, take a
Ooh,
point. You're right.
yeah,
Yeah, they were
right.
blinded by his
It's
light.
too dark.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a real fuck you, isn't it? As well. Like, I mean, Nostramo is just like the worst place to live, like all in all, isn't it? And then it's just like, oh, someone's coming to save us. He's blinded
Yeah.
us because he's too fucking amazing, brilliant. We're too fucked up to look at like, his awesomeness. So, what stopped the Emperor from seeing what Guilliman was doing on Macrab?
That's a good question.
On your what?
On Macrab?
Macrab.
Macrab. Well, she lose a point. Let's down to one apiece.
I think
I've forgotten the question because I was thinking about Gilliman riding a giant crab.
And he calls it Macrab. I'm riding on Macrab. Right, so what stopped the Emperor from seeing what Guilliman was doing on Macrab?
there was like a warp storm.
Yeah,
But okay, well, it was a specific kind of warp storm. It's called the Ruin Storm.
Ruin Storm.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think I give either of you a point for that.
Fair.
But we're coming into the last question now, so the rest of the quiz is meaningless anyway because it's worth
Excellent.
1 million points. Last question: what is the Emperor's last offering to Horus before they fight?
I think my gut says that he says that he promises to be able to remove all the taint in Horus.
Welshie, what do you think?
Is it a hand job?
He's like, come on, stop all this silliness. You're just pent up.
I promise I'll take my glove off.
Yeah.
I know it looks a bit sharp.
It's a father's duty. Well, Matt, you take home 1 million points because he offers him a chance for redemption, which I think is quite interesting. He says he gives him a chance to redeem himself, which
I'm
you know.
excited to see how this plays out in the The final Siege of Terror.
Yeah,
book,
will it be
like
a
how
hand
they
job
write that.
instead?
Yeah, it could
Maybe
be.
you're both right. Okay, on a rare twist of fate, you're both right because the
You can
officer
get all that
attention
darkness out of you
through a hand job.
Just watch.
Yeah, maybe that's how he gets the taint out. Yeah.
That's how he gets the taint out. Taint misbehaving. It's going to be the name of the last book. You'll see.
I really hope we haven't ruined it for everyone.
Oh, yeah, okay. If you've listened to this far in the show,
Oh,
then
we've blown
spoilers. Spoilers.
We've blown it everywhere.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.